We are live, guys. Welcome to another live stream from Girls of High Value channel. My name is Joseph Darling. Today we're talking about patriarchy and feminism. Which one is better? And understand that this channel is about understanding the woman, understanding yourself, since this is a channel for women, understanding femininity, masculinity, understanding health, how your health really is derived from your femininity, and basically how to create relationships that are good for society long term. Because there's a lot of relationships that are going on today in society that, people are free to do if they want to, but it doesn't work very well, and it doesn't create a beautiful and amazing next generation as we could if we had followed certain formulas and strategies. So anyway, that's what I wanted to share with you guys today. Let's first talk about patriarchy. Patriarchy has been the form of the way we run society ever since the beginning of time. Okay, and basically what it means is like pater, like father, right? So it's basically the head of the house was always the father, and he's the one who directed everything, and he was the one who, like, it was always men that were leading the world. It was always men who became leaders of countries and nations and tribes. It was always men who were the wise men. It was always men, right? Patriarchy, that's what it's about, where men are leading the way. I'm not saying that it's better. That's what we're going to discover in this video. And then throughout time, then it has developed until what we have today, which is feminism. Now, feminism has, come to fruition several times throughout history for very short blips of time. I'll explain why. But basically, when people prosper a lot, and there's been other times in history when the people have prospered, right? It's not just today. Like, yes, the prospering has gone to a whole new level today than it ever has before, in terms of wealth, in terms of material wealth, in terms of, how fast the society is growing. But and it's amazing with technology and everything that's happened now, but we're living today in a matriarchy, or mother, right? And feminism. So which one is better? I would say that they're both wrong in the way that they've been practiced in the past. I like to believe, and I know that it's a fact, that society improves continuously over time. I don't believe in an end of the world scenario. I believe that over time we're going to develop, we're going to grow, we're going to become an amazing society. We're creating heaven on earth as we speak. When you look out and you look at the news and you look at your Facebook scroll or whatever it is, it doesn't look like we're doing that. It actually seems as if things are getting worse. And they are, temporarily. We got to understand that that's temporarily. It gets worse before it gets better. And it always gets worse before it gets better, right? So we've got to understand that point. And what's going to happen eventually is we're going to figure it out. Today, we've come to a point where you can't really burn books anymore. That's what happened in the past. This is how you got rid of history, is by burning books. If you burn books, in the past, then no one would figure it out, and they'd, grow up ignorant. And if their parents didn't tell them stories and tell them about how things, operate in the world, then the kids wouldn't know about it. And for each generation, they lose out on that information unless they wrote it down in a book. But if people kept burning books, you're not going to have a solution. But then the printing press came along. Suddenly, things started exploding in terms of how much written we had. And that led us to the information age that we're living in today, which has exponentially grown, so that we have now more information now than we've ever had before. in terms of understanding the woman, in terms of understanding relationships, understanding technology. Everything is available for us now. And that's why I believe that we're not going to return back to, oh no, we're ignorant again and we don't know anything about the world or anything about anatomy or anything about how to heal people, etc., etc. We've come past that point, which means that today is so much better than any other time that we've ever been. But there's going to be some form of societal collapse again. But then we're going to build it up again. It's kind of like you have this cycle, and it goes, every time it goes down, and then it goes back up, and then it goes down, and then it goes back up, and then it goes down and goes back up. That's how society is progressing. So you might know for a fact with hope that everything is awesome, but it's going to get worse before it gets better. And why is it getting worse before it gets better? It's because it's kind of like a gyroscope as you shoot a rocket up into space to hit the moon. It's going to go a little bit off to the side. It doesn't matter where you start from. You're going to hit the moon because of the gyroscope and because of the fuel and, the rocket's fuel, whatever, right? So, but you're going to lean a bit too much to this way, and then the gyroscope will push you back to the other side, but you're still not aligned for the moon, and then it's going to kick you to the other side, and then it's going to kick you back to the other side, and continuously you're getting closer now to your exact destination because of the gyroscope. That's how it works with truth. That's how it works with creating heaven on earth. And this cycle has been done continuously for many worlds. Okay, this same formula of creating heaven on earth, this is not the first experiment with with humankind. God knows exactly what he's doing, and he's basically planted a seed so that evolution would happen. This is my opinion, that evolution would happen and it would roll out without his intervention. He doesn't have to intervene all of the time because continuously things are happening exactly the way that they're supposed to in order for us to get the light and to get the truth. Awesome. So now we're going back to patriarchy and feminism and why I believe that they're both wrong in the way that they've been practiced in the past. But however, we're going to take the best from both worlds and to create the society, to create heaven on earth over time. The reason why patriarchy and matriarchy is continuously wrong in the past, and they have been in the past, is because of blame. Let me explain what that means. Femininity blames. Masculinity takes responsibility, right? It's the opposite of blaming. Femininity points fingers. Masculinity looks at himself as the problem and thereby works on himself to solve the problem, right? He understands that like there's tons of problems in society, but if he continuously points fingers at everyone else, nothing's gonna change, except for if someone else who he has pointed the finger at is masculine, and that person takes the blame in order to solve the problem. Does that make sense? So that's what it's about, is creating a generation of masculinity, because masculinity will actually take the responsibility and then solve it. That's what we need. And the longer the whole world remain in their femininity, the longer we'll have the problems. And that's what we've had throughout generation. Yes, men become more masculine when there's war, and when there's war, then they end up, fighting. They have to be disciplined, they have to survive, blah, blah, blah. And then suddenly, once the war is done, they're responsible now for their wife, for their kids, and then they try to lead them the right way because they want their family to prosper and to survive, blah, blah, blah. And so, that's when patriarchy comes back into play because of the war. So there's this cycle that I explained. You can call it the pride cycle, you can call it the wealth cycle, you can call it whatever cycle you want. It's the cycle that happens. And it's basically that everyone starts out poor. Okay, you can look at it as a family, you can look at it as an individual, or maybe even a nation. Everyone starts out poor, and then because of their poverty, the man is the one in charge because he refuses to let anyone come into their territory. He's very adamant on on everyone following his direction, or else they will die, right? Survival is all about the man protecting everyone and making sure that everyone is safe. And then that becomes prospering, right? They get into growth mode, and from growth mode they get into riches. Eventually they become rich. What's interesting is that very often the next generation after a man passes on is that the next generation is now wealthy, and because they're wealthy, they tend to be lazier than the past generation who went from poverty to riches. Now, obviously, this can happen over several generations because not every generation become rich, right? Today, it's a bit different because you can become rich. It's not your fault if you remain in your poverty, but it's as a man, it's totally your fault if you don't get rich, right? So this cycle is happening faster in this day and age. But in the past, this is also what happened, is that when people are rich, they become lazy, they become prideful, and then that ends up squandering the wealth that they've had, and they end up going into war because some people squander their wealth and then they see other people have what they want, and so they begin the violence aspect, and they're blaming, right? Because they're all feminine, and then that becomes war, and then that war causes all of the wealth to be gone, and everyone starts afresh again with poverty. This is the cycle that happens again and again and again. Now, understand that when we start out as children, we are all feminine. Every single one of us are feminine. And what does it mean to be feminine? It means that we're emotionally inconsistent, meaning that when we're in an environment, that environment will dictate how we feel about ourselves, and emotions will be happening to us instead of us dictating what kind of emotions we have. If that makes sense. So the less we're able to control our environment, to control our emotions, the more feminine we'll be. The more we're able to do it, the more masculine we are. And the fact is, God designed men, to be masculine and to grow their masculinity over time. God designed women to be feminine. However, if women are poor and they're in poverty, it's very difficult for them to remain in their femininity if they have to struggle and survive on their own. If they have a strong masculine man, okay, he might be still very feminine because he's emotionally inconsistent, and he blames and all that stuff, so he's still feminine, but he has a huge aspect of masculinity in him still. The woman will be more feminine because her man is also very masculine, and so she'll be submissive, she'll be meek, she'll be flexible, she'll be all those feminine features, but she'll also have a lot of masculinity according to how much he blames her. Does that make sense? Because if he blames her, then she will blame him back. And if she blames him back, then there's going to be fighting back and forth. And this is the story of monogamy throughout history, continuously. This is how it works. And women that don't have a masculine man, or a provider or provision somewhere from outside of themselves, they will be highly masculine, and that's going to very much affect their kids. The more masculine a woman is, the more neglected her kids are going to be. So we got to understand that aspect of things, that the next generation are going to be neglected according to the strugglings of the mother. However, because parents love their children and want them to have a better lifestyle and better life than they've had, they want their kids to progress. Those kids very often do progress, but still blame their parents, but they turn out better than their parents, and that's why the next generation continuously evolves and become better. Except when men and women begin to squander the wealth that they have and the riches that they have, and end up in poverty again because they didn't listen to their parents, they didn't want to become like their parents, they wanted to do their own thing, and maybe they turned out worse. Right? And that's when we become poor, and then we become better, etc. So now that we know femininity and masculinity, that everyone starts out with it, but then we basically, as men, we decide if we become more masculine or not. It's a personal choice unless there's war. If we're in a wealth cycle and we're at the wealth apex of things, that's when we decide whether or not we we actually progress towards masculinity or not, right? Because since we're wealthy, we can be feminine. Femininity is all man is focused on casual sex, focused on stimulants, alcohol, drugs, and all that stuff that shows that I'm feminine. If I'm masculine, I'll take responsibility for my life. I'll take responsibility for my health, responsibility for my wealth, that I don't squander it and keep it for the next generation and beyond, right? And teach my kids wisely so that they don't automatically get my wealth, but they do it based upon me seeing that they've understood the principles that I've taught them, if that makes sense. So now that we understand this, patriarchy has been blaming women from the beginning of time. The reason why they had to do that was because they had to do that. It was a very problematic if a man's daughters ended up sleeping around and becoming pregnant and then creating bastards. Like basically the man leaps because he doesn't want to take responsibility. He basically spread his seed, and that became a problem for the man. The man of the house had to now provide for a child that they were not ready to have. And he cannot, always protect his daughter from doing those things. So he had to be strict. He had to blame. So blaming from one aspect, yeah, it's good that he blamed, because then that would make sure that his the women in his family had fear, right? Because if they didn't have that fear instilled in them, they maybe would go off and do all those things and become impregnated, and suddenly the man of the house had to now provide for more and more and more and more kids, depending upon how many daughters he had, right? And especially if his wife went out and slept with someone else, he'd also have to provide for someone else's child. That's very problematic for men. They don't want to do that because they're individualistic, right? And they don't. That's not how it functions in a man's brain. So that's been the history of the world until we got contraceptions. Contraceptions is one of the greatest inventions of our time. I think it's absolutely awesome. Yeah, but bro, aren't you patriarchal? Like, come on. And I'm like, contraception is amazing, right? We need it for even for family use. Okay, so that you don't just simply have kids upon kids upon kids and are not able to provide for them, and that's why you neglect them. It's a problem. So feminism has now been created because of the contraceptive pill, where now feminism is now talking about sexual freedom, emotional freedom, taking care of minorities, and blah 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 blah. This is the feminine mindset, which has its great aspects, and then it also has its negative aspects. The negative aspects is that it's telling women to do things and to not be rational about things. Now, obviously, me personally, you guys know that if you've been part of my channel for a while, that women need to be allowed to express their emotions. Women need to be allowed to not have secrets if they're with the right guy, so that they can share their secrets and get them off their chest and basically be allowed to live a better lifestyle. Um, so feminism has its really bad aspects when it comes to family, right? If you as a woman believe in feminism, what's going to happen eventually is that you're going to end up alone with cats a lot of the time, if you really believe in feminism, and you take it to the nth degree. Maybe even you manage to get a man, but trust me, that man will be feminine, because if you believe in feminism, then that means that you have to take responsibility for yourself, you have to blame yourself, you have to go out there and survive on your own, etc., etc. And women do that, but which direction are they going? Femininity or masculinity? They're going towards masculinity, and the more masculine they become, the more they neglect their children, or neglect having children altogether, which is, in my opinion, good. If a woman is very masculine and very focused on her career, I think it's kind of neglectful, not really from her point of view, because it's not her fault, right, to have kids. It's for those kids. So I'd rather them use contraception and not have those kids born into the world, because they're going to be neglected, and that neglect is going to spill over to the next generation, and going to basically raise kids that create issues for society, that create violence, that create war, that create rape, that create all of those bad things. The more women are led, in the right way by the right men who are trustworthy towards becoming unburdened and feminine, the more amazing the world is going to become, because those feminine mothers will never want to neglect their kids. And why would they? Because women are naturally good if they are unburdened. If they have a man who's masculine by choice and who has set up his wealth the right way so that he can provide for his women to provide for his kids. If his women can be unburdened, those children will become quite amazing, and way more amazing than the masculine woman's children. And then he can actually teach them the right way, so children, and then he can actually teach them the right way so that they can retain his wealth that he's developed throughout his lifetime. So, keeping it simple here, what am I saying? I'm saying that the best aspects of patriarchy and the best aspects of feminism, which is basically patriarchy, men taking responsibility for their household, men developing lots of wealth, and then deciding who they want to share it with voluntarily. Okay? That's libertarianism, meaning it's survival of the fittest in terms of the man going out there and fighting against the world, in terms of creating win-win situations, not fighting in terms of violence and war, because patriarchy is supposed to be masculine. And if he governs in a masculine way, there will never be war, there will never be violence, and there will never be stimulants or any addictions that would create issues for the family and the next generation. Because he's leading from a rational standpoint, he's leading from a way of taking responsibility for his wife, for his children, and for everyone that he loves around him. That's patriarchy in its pure form. However, it's only the good parts of patriarchy. The bad parts of patriarchy is when there's feminine men who govern families and who govern nations, because that's when violence and war and stimulants and all those other horrible things happen, right? But if he's masculine, patriarchy is fantastic. And then you've got feminism, where you take the best aspect of feminism, which is contraceptions, um, and also that women are allowed to be themselves. Women are just as valued as men. Women are not sold or shopped around. There's feminism is taking away, in some aspects, taking away prostitution, taking away, and also having someone protect and provide for oneself. Okay, feminism creates big government, but um, feminists take it to the nth degree, meaning that they replace the man completely by saying that the government should have control over me, the government should provide for me, the government should protect me, and they basically replace the man's role in helping her to be feminine. Right? Women believe that the government's going to rescue her, and that's why she can remain in her femininity and do whatever she wants. Not so, right? Because the government taxes women just as much as men, right? And so when you're taxed 50% as a woman, that's ridiculous, right? Because you're building up the government when you could have just been in a relationship with the man in libertarianism, where there is limited government and the government's only role is to protect the freedoms of the individuals from everyone else's tyranny. Right? So if everyone's free and there's only a limited government whose only responsibility is making sure that that everyone is protected from each other, in the sense of, you can't force the other person, everything has to happen voluntarily. That's beautiful. That's when we enter into heaven mode, right? As long as we keep forcing people to pay taxes, and as long as we keep forcing people to do this and do that and do this and do this from a governmental standpoint, there can never be heaven on earth. So we've got to move towards everyone becoming free, because the faster we do that, the more educated we can become on people, the more educated we can become on principles and the right way to do things. The way that you look at how they're doing capitalism today, that's not capitalism. That's crony capitalism, meaning the government intervention in business causing monopolies and causing like a lot of problems because of government intervention. Anyway, bailouts and of banks and big companies and stuff like that, when bankruptcies should be happening in order to, anyway, that's a new discussion. The point is, the best aspects of both worlds is what creates Three Girls in Love society. You understand that the thing that has created all of the issues we see in today's world is monogamy. Monogamy is the root of all evil, because monogamy is what creates poverty, because the man doesn't have any motivation, because the woman is the one who's leading the way in the relationship. The woman is the one who has less sexual desire than the man in that kind of relationship, and because of that, the man is continuously looking to her for the thing that he emotionally needs, which is sexual fulfillment, right? And she can never really fulfill it, but he wants a little bit of crumbs, right? And because of that, then she basically decides the relationship. She decides the relationship and where they're heading because of her emotions. That creates a feminine man. And if you create a feminine man, you're going to get the kind of warped patriarchy and the warped feminism that we see in the world today. It's monogamy that's the root of all evil. Responsible polygyny, however, as long as it remains three women, none of the above and none below. However, in libertarianism, you can't really control that. People need to be free to do whatever they want. However, we teach principles and then let people govern themselves in the way that it's three women. And when you do that, Three Girls in Love society creates the best of patriarchy and the best of feminism. Because in patriarchal terms, in Three Girls in Love, what happens is that the man actually now has motivation to go out there and create wealth. Okay, not only motivation, but he has capacity to do so because he doesn't have to be at home all of the time together with his woman, which if he's a man, a masculine man, he wouldn't want to fold clothes or to do the dishes and stuff like that. He wants to go out there and compete. Okay, I don't know why I did that, but anyway, to compete in the world against other men, to build and fuel his testosterone, which makes him come back more of a man. That's what we need. That's what we want. More masculine men. And from the other standpoint, he still will be able to govern more emotionally consistent and rationally compared to governing emotionally, which is a really bad idea, by the way, which is why I don't believe in any female leaders at the top, because they lead emotionally. Yes, we have feminine leaders in the world today who are men. They lead emotionally sometimes as well, obviously, but we need to take it to the next level where men actually are masculine, full through and through. That's when society will improve. Um, so, uh, so that's the best parts of patriarchy, and the best parts of feminism in Three Girls in Love society is that you've got contraception, so women don't have way too many kids in responsible polygyny. There should be one kid per 8 years per woman. In my opinion, no more than that, because you don't want to burden women. You burden women, you make them masculine. You want them to remain unburdened, remain in their femininity, so that their kids are not neglected. Because if they're neglected, then we're going to create the cycle all over again. And then those kids are going to believe that, oh, polygyny didn't work. Now I want to be in monogamy. And then monogamy doesn't work, and the kids are still going to be neglected, etc. And the cycle continues. Let's get out of the cycle. The cycle is, or the solution is Three Girls in Love society, where men take responsibility and women are allowed to express their emotions. They're allowed to do whatever they want because they've got time and money freedom. And they're able to blame the man for any wrongdoing, for any issues that happen in their household. They don't blame each other because that's going to create issues. That's going to create problems. And in the beginning, it's going to be difficult not to blame other women. So the man has to treat them equally, which is the rational way to do things in order to retain his women. So they're going to blame him, and that's going to create harmony amongst them. Because what's the best way to create to become unified? What's the best way to unify the people? It's to have a common enemy, right? And the common enemy is their man. So if he creates problems, he's got to solve them. And so they can blame him, which is great. Just the same way that women blame government today, wouldn't it be way better if they blamed a man who was masculine and had actually the capacity to provide and protect? Way better. And then they'd have the time and money freedom to do whatever it is that they want, right? Within boundaries of not sleeping around with anyone else. And also, obviously, right? The obvious things that you don't do in order to mess up the family dynamics and family relationships. But other than that, you're free to do whatever it is that you want, right? And in my opinion, obviously, you wouldn't work outside the home, because why would you want to work outside the home when he's making that much money? It doesn't make any sense. And the government is not going to take half of your money anymore, because the more we have three girls in love society, the more people vote for libertarianism. They don't vote for socialistic regimes. They don't vote for communism, because it doesn't make any sense when you live in three girls in love society. Why would you want the government to take half of your man's money? Why would you want to not have passive income, time and money freedom as a woman, so that you can do whatever it is that you want with your time and with his money? And to take care of your kids, you don't have to leave it over to the government to take care of your kids. This system simply makes so much sense the more deeply you study it, the more you go through my channel and understand the principles. Patriarchy is fantastic when done right. However, there's massive negative repercussions when men begin to blame women, which is what's happening today with the MGTOW movement and with everything else that's happening. Is men blaming women, blaming women, blaming women, when it's not their fault. Women are emotionally inconsistent by nature, because that's how we want them to be. That's when it's not their fault. Women are emotionally inconsistent by nature, because that's how we want them to be. That's what they were designed to be. If you're not emotionally inconsistent as a woman or as a child, then you're going to be boring, like us men, right? The more masculine we are as men, the more boring we become. You want a masculine man, but it becomes very boring if everyone's masculine, right? So we want life, and femininity brings life into our lives, so that men are rewarded with life when they come back from work, from having competed in the marketplace. Now, we get some life out of that as well, and we love going out there doing that. However, there's so much beauty and femininity in their women and in their children when they come home to be rewarded. We want emotional inconsistency. We don't want emotional stability in women. That sucks, okay? And the more masculine you are as a woman, the more that's going to be an issue. So um, that's what I wanted to share with you guys. This is a very important concept to understand, because when feminists are blaming men and saying that all men are doing this and men are doing that, I'm like, I agree. And when men are blaming women, I'm like, man, they have no idea what they're talking about. Why would you blame the woman when you're the solution? Yeah, maybe women are the problem, but men are the solution. The faster they take the blame and accept it and be indifferent to that blame, and then go out there and solve the problem, the more beautiful world we're going to create. And we're going to create heaven on earth with three girls in love society. This is the Girls of High Value channel. My name is Joseph Darling. I'll see you in the next video.